Most men step into the world of desire with empty hands and hollow strategies. They think beauty is won with flowers, laughter, or the softness of charm. They think that if they decorate themselves enough, they will be chosen. They mistake performance for power, forgetting that what dazzles for a moment is forgotten in the long night. Their efforts are like sparks bright, but gone before the eye can even adjust. And that is precisely why history forgets their names. The world does not carve monuments to men who begged for attention, nor does it immortalize those who lived to be liked. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something far more brutal and far more permanent. He knew that to be remembered is not to be pleasing, but to wield presence so sharp it cuts into memory. He saw that true power is not in the hand that gives gifts, but in the silence that makes others restless when you are gone, a silence that vibrates louder than applause. This is where most men fail. They crave affection when they should command gravity. They chase warmth when they should be shaping atmosphere. They mistake being wanted for being necessary. Understand this. The goal is never to be liked. It is to become unforgettable, to exist in such a way that your absence alters the air, that your name stirs unease when spoken in rooms you are not in. And you do not achieve this by drowning someone in love or offering them endless sweetness. For what is always within reach is never truly desired. You achieve it by shaping what they feel when you withdraw it, by daring to be missed instead of constantly available. The paradox is cruel, but undeniable absence breeds hunger, while constant presence breeds indifference. The hand that never lets go is eventually taken for granted, while the hand that pulls away is the one remembered in dreams. A man who never risks being forgotten will always be overlooked. A man who is willing to vanish, to let silence speak on his behalf, becomes the echo that lingers in the heart, the ghost that thought cannot banish. Machiavelli once whispered the line, "Most men cannot stomach. It is safer to be feared than loved." To the soft ear this sounds villainous, as though it belongs only to tyrants and oppressors. But look closer, not at the words of people, but at their instincts. Love, when given endlessly, dissolves into background noise. It becomes like the hum of a fan always there, but unnoticed until it stops. Fear, however, sharpens attention. It makes the mind alert. It engraves moments into memory. It keeps the soul alive to presence. And when that fear is not born from cruelty, but from consequence, it transforms into something higher, the anchor of respect. For respect is love with steel in its spine, devotion forged through boundaries. A woman does not obsess over the man who gave her everything freely, because there is no weight in gifts that cost nothing. She obsesses over the one who would rather lose her than lose himself, the man whose essence cannot be purchased, only earned. That is the figure she replays in her mind, not because he caged her, but because he refused to be caged himself. Real power is not in raising your voice, not in threats, not in violence. Those are the tantrums of weak men pretending to be strong, men who mistake noise for authority and confusion for command. A roar without substance is only the cry of insecurity dressed in volume. True power is silence paired with certainty, a quiet that bends the air, a calm that unsettles more than any outburst could. It is when your absence burns more than your presence ever begged to be felt. when the silence you leave behind grows louder than the words you could have spoken, when she realizes that disrespect costs her your company, suddenly her emotions rearrange. Her laughter no longer feels free, her confidence wavers. Her thoughts circle you like prey, circling the hunter it cannot see. Attraction deepens into obsession, not because you gave her more, not because you tried harder, but because you were willing to give nothing once your standards were crossed. That restraint cuts sharper than generosity ever could. That is not cruelty. That is law. A man who does not enforce the weight of his own boundaries is a man waiting to be consumed. The fear of losing what cannot be, replaced as stronger than the comfort of what is always given. People cling harder to rarity than to abundance. They respect what is scarce and dismiss what is common. And here is where philosophy enters the heart of seduction. Humans are not ruled by reason, but by perception. Logic is slow, fragile, and often ignored. Perception, however, moves instantly, without defense. You can be loyal, intelligent, noble in spirit, but if you walk into the room like a shadow of yourself, none of it matters. Weak posture erases strong character. A trembling voice drowns out wisdom. People are not moved by what is hidden within you, but by what radiates beyond you. Machiavelli said it clearly. It is not necessary to be good. It is necessary to appear good. The world is moved not by truth, but by the image of truth. And that image, if crafted with precision, can outweigh the reality itself. People respond not to what you are, but to what they feel in your presence. And presence is a weapon sharper than any word, heavier than any gift, more permanent than any speech. A man who understands this does not need to explain himself. He does not need to justify his silence or unravel himself in desperate detail. He does not need to overshare or perform like an actor seeking applause. He lets his mystery breathe for him. He shows fragments, never the whole, because wholeness is comfortable, and comfort kills tension. What is hidden is what haunts. What is unseen is what lingers in imagination. Humans do not chase what they fully understand, they chase what escapes their grasp. We are drawn not to completion, but to the unfinished puzzle, the unanswered question, the shape that suggests more than it reveals. Mystery is not deception, it is architecture. It is the deliberate construction of space in which the mind builds its own illusions. And what the imagination creates is always more intoxicating than what is given outright. Mystery builds tension, and tension fuels desire. It is not about being unreadable for the sake of vanity, but about being so self-contained that no one feels they can hold all of you. That, and only that, is where fascination lives. Women will test you, not because they hate you, but because they are wired to measure the weight of your spine. It is not malice, but instinct. It is nature's way of asking the silent question. Can this man hold the storm? Or will he shatter in the wind? She will turn cold, then warm, then cold again. Not because she is confused, but because she is observing. She will speak one way and act another, not because she wants to break you, but because she wants to see what remains when contradictions surround you. These are not random storms, they are trials, carefully woven patterns of tension designed to reveal your foundation. And most men crumble under them. They argue to prove innocence. They plead to restore comfort. They explain to recover harmony. But in those very gestures they betray themselves. They reveal their clay in her hands, soft enough to be molded, desperate enough to be reshaped. And the moment she senses that pliability, she knows she cannot lean on them, because no one leans on what bends too easily. But Machiavelli, centuries ago, left the blueprint. A ruler must be both lion and fox. Power without intelligence collapses into brute force, which always burns itself out. Intelligence without power starves in silence, clever but unable to act. Only when the two fuse do they command. The lion does not argue. He does not explain his boundaries. He simply exists as if those boundaries are carved into the earth itself. His presence alone makes the lion visible, even if he never names it. The fox does not fall for tricks. He does not bite every bait thrown into his path. He listens, he observes, he watches quietly from the shadows, striking not with impulse but with precision when the moment is clean. A man who fuses these two becomes unreadable. She cannot predict whether the silence she feels is the calm of the lion or the calculation of the fox. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. That tension between fear and fascination is where obsession is born, not in certainty, not in comfort, but in the trembling edge of unpredictability. She cannot tell if your stillness means disinterest or strategy, if your silence is punishment or patience. And so her mind circles you endlessly. Trying to solve a riddle you will never let her fully answer. But it does not stop there. Machiavelli spoke of division, not as destruction, but as control. He knew the sharpest power is not in open war, but in subtle fracture. The most enduring influence is not forcing someone to abandon their beliefs, but planting the smallest seed of doubt and stepping back. You don't fight her thoughts head on, you bend them slightly, so they begin to collapse under their own weight. A single calm line, spoken without emotion, without emphasis, can unravel certainty more than 1,000 arguments. You do not push, you redirect. And once doubt lives inside her, once her confidence in her own script begins to tremble, she starts to look outward for stability. And where does she turn? To the one who shook her in the first place. Your presence becomes the compass she returns to, not because you demanded it, but because her own uncertainty made you the anchor. That is influence at its purest form, not loud declarations, not constant persuasion, but quiet dissonance that unsettles her just enough to make her orbit you. Influence is not noise, it is gravity, subtle yet relentless, the invisible pull that keeps her circling you long after she told herself she wouldn't. And when punishment must come, it comes once clean without explanation, not with endless words, not with drawn-out wars, not with the theater of raised voices. No shouting, no pleading, no desperate attempts for her to understand. A man who explains his judgment weakens it. A man who begs for recognition of his authority has already lost it. The punishment is silent, decisive, final. Your withdrawal is the verdict. Your absence is the punishment. Nothing wounds deeper than the space where you once were. But reward, that is another art. Reward must come slowly, carefully, in doses so precise they feel like accidents. A look held longer than usual, a single word of approval given when she least expects it, a touch offered when her guard is down, because the human mind does not crave what is constant. It craves what is rare. Predictability is the death of desire. If you flood her with validation, if you shower her endlessly with affection, she will drown in it until she cannot feel it anymore. It becomes static, a background hum. But if warmth arrives sparingly, unexpectedly, in moments she feels she has earned, then hunger never dies. Pleasure given slowly binds the heart tighter than pleasure given all at once. The rare becomes sacred, and the sacred becomes addictive. A man who understands this does not chase her body like the rest. He does not seek only surface reactions, fleeting laughter, or the temporary rush of her approval. He studies her patterns. He observes what others ignore. He notices the cracks no one else sees, the way her voice drops when she feels small, the hesitation in her words when she fears judgment, the shift in her laughter when it is forced, the flicker in her eyes when her words betray her. He does not consume these signals like gossip. He stores them like weapons. And then, at the precise moment, he uses one. He speaks a truth she thought invisible, a truth she buried, hoping no one would ever uncover it. Not as judgment, not as flattery, simply as fact. And in that moment, she feels exposed, not in shame, not in cruelty, but in revelation. She realizes she has been seen. Not the mask, not the role, not the performance she shows the world, but the fracture she guards most tightly. That clarity pierces deeper than any compliment, deeper than any seduction. It leaves a mark that cannot be erased, because every woman remembers the man who saw her truth when everyone else settled for her mask. And here lies the final paradox, the one that crowns the architecture of control. To rule a heart, you must master absence as much as presence. If you are always there, always available, always within reach, you become background, a wall, a chair, a piece of furniture, necessary, perhaps, but never worshipped. But if you vanish not in bitterness, not as a childish gain, but in silence and certainty, you create a void, and the mind cannot resist a void. Nature hates emptiness, and the human heart hates it even more. She will try to fill it, and in filling it, she fills it with you. In that absence, you transform. You become less of a man and more of a riddle, less of a presence and more of a ghost, a question that loops in her mind, a turning point she cannot rewrite. While other men leave memories, you leave architecture and echo that grows louder the more she tries to escape it. That is the difference between being forgotten and being unforgettable. Because the truth is this: she may forget lovers, she may forget flings, she may even forget the men who exhausted themselves giving her everything she thought she wanted. Their names will blur, their faces will fade, their gestures will dissolve into the haze of repetition, but she will never forget the man who forced her to transform, the man who held his standard higher than her chaos, the man who was willing to walk away when his line was crossed, who refused to crawl back into her arms simply to preserve comfort. That man does not become another entry. In her memory, he becomes the scar that shaped it. He is the man who did not chase her illusions, but shattered them. the one who tore down the fragile stage she built with games and masks, leaving her to face herself in the mirror. And once you become that turning point in her life, you do not fade, you live as the shadow behind her choices. She may deny it, she may bury it, she may even rage against it, but every decision she makes after you carries your fingerprint. You become the unspoken ghost in her future. This is not manipulation. This is not cruelty. This is philosophy applied to desire, the art of becoming gravity. Instead of chasing affection, gravity does not beg for acknowledgement. It simply exists, and everything is pulled by it. You are not pushing. You are not pleading. You are not tricking. You are simply embodying a weight that cannot be ignored. Freud said it best, emotional memory shapes desire. People do not long for what came easy, what slipped into their hands without effort. They long for what scarred them, what marked them, what branded their soul. It is not pleasure alone that endures. It is pain refined into revelation. What they remember is not who gave them everything, but who forced them to confront themselves. Machiavelli knew the same. The one who controls the story controls the mind. The one who plants the interpretation becomes the author of memory itself. So do not try to be another chapter in her life, another fleeting season she flips through in boredom. Become the event that rewrote the book. Become the page where the story broke, where the plot changed, where she had no choice but to evolve. That is what lodges you in eternity. And once you understand this, once you feel it burn in your veins, everything shifts. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop asking to be loved. You stop lowering yourself for the scraps of attention others fight for. You become the axis she cannot spin away from. Not because you forced her, not because you deceived her, but because you became the man who never needed her approval to stand tall. You were whole before her. You will remain whole after her. That self-possession is what chains her memory to you. And once you stand that way, you are not forgotten. You are not reduced to a name she casually recalls. You are remembered as the man who left marks where others left gifts. The man who carved transformation where others handed flowers. And gifts decay, flowers die, but transformation endures. That is immortality in the heart of another.